I ask leave of the Senate to continue my remarks.
Is there objection?
Object. She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
Well, that happened this week. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren forced to stop participating in the debate over Jeff Sessions for Attorney General after Senate Republicans voted she violated Senate rules by impugning Sessions' character. And we're back now with the panel. Michael, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is an extremely strategic politician. Do you think he was purposely trying to elevate Elizabeth Warren to make her the face of the Democratic opposition, or do you think he was just worn out and fed up with all the Democratic obstruction?
Maybe. The Democrat opposition's in big trouble if Elizabeth Warren's its face. I don't think anybody wants the regulations that she wants, the expansion of Obamacare. She doesn't think it went far enough, that she wants the social liberalism that she has. But I think he also is legitimately concerned about the complete breakdown of decorum that exists in this country. You did a segment at the end with Stephen Miller about President Trump and some of his tweets. Let's talk about the left. Ivanka Trump went to an exercise class in Washington, D.C. earlier this week. Didn't make a big deal of it, was just quietly trying to go and enjoy herself. And the CEO of that exercise group decided she's going to go on Facebook and grandstand about how much she didn't want Ivanka Trump there. Ivanka Trump is trying to fly across the country with her family and left-wing people. A senior member of the Trump White House was in a shopping store getting dresses with her bridesmaids and was attacked in the shopping store. There's a complete breakdown. Nobody's asking Chuck Schumer, hey, do you have the courage to stand up to these crazy people on the left who are uncivilly and just unreasonably attacking people? Nobody's asking Nancy Pelosi these questions. And so I think if we want to talk about Donald Trump's tweets, I think if we want to talk about Kellyanne Conway and all this stuff, we should talk about the complete lack of respect and decorum that the left has. And I think that starts with Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and the rest of them.
Well, we're going to start with Juan Williams. How do you plead?
I mean, I just sit and listen and wonder, because to me, you know, where this starts, a lot of it has to start with Donald Trump.
No, Donald Trump's a counter-puncher.
Oh, he's a counter-puncher. I think he's tweeted out.
Juan, do you think that Nancy Pelosi should have to condemn the way that Ivanka Trump has been treated for the last couple months? It's disgusting.
Look, I don't want any incivil behavior, but I'm just saying to you, Elizabeth Warren, the way you describe her, she's a threat to the nation. She's not. And she was reading from a letter from Coretta Scott King on the Senate floor. And King had been critical of Jeff Sessions, the senator now the Attorney General. But is that a reason to say that Elizabeth Warren is not allowed to speak? In fact, picking up on Chris's point, because I have the same perception, that Senator McConnell is a strategic, smart player, an inside player in the game. So what was the point? Because it looks to me like he all of a sudden elevated Elizabeth Warren and her comments and her criticism.
But here's what is a threat to the nation. The breakdown of civility in this country is a threat to the nation. I think it's important for people like you to start standing up and demanding that Elizabeth Warren and that Nancy Pelosi and that Chuck Schumer, we spend all of this time talking about Donald Trump. Everything that Donald Trump does gets criticized. It is important to start standing up and asking Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer whether the complete breakdown of decorum and civility that we see. Betsy DeVos tried to visit.
We can't pretend like this lack of civility in our politics has started since the November election. If you look at things that were said about President Obama and you look at things that were said about President Bush, especially at the height of the Iraq War, we've been dealing with for years. This isn't a matter of what people are just saying about Ivanka Trump. And we spend countless amount of
time talking about Donald Trump, and we spend no time asking Elizabeth Warren, asking Chuck Schumer and others to push back.
We had protesters who this week, they call themselves protesters. Many of them are just criminals. And they're criminals because they're denying a government official the ability to do government business at a public school. I'm talking about Secretary of Education DeVos. They complain that, oh, she doesn't know anything about public schools. She hates public schools. She's going to kill all public schools. They put all that caricature out. Then she goes to a public school, and the most vicious, horrible things said about her, preventing her from actually entering the school at one point. So I think there's a good point to be made that the resistance movement that has been fueled and fomented by many in Congress who are encouraging it, even former President Obama is heartened by all the enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, protests, fine. What we've been seeing at Berkeley and even at this DeVos thing, which I think frankly gets scary, is that there's a push to bring this to this powder keg moment where at some point force will have to be used to keep people safe. Then they're going to say, see, it's police brutality. Trump has a police state. It's martial law. I mean, the volume pitch that is being brought up because they lost, they're bitter about it, and they have nothing to do except stop other people from speaking. That resistance is fine as long as it's, you got to have a protest, so Laura, that's fine.
Laura, so when the president speaks about a so-called judge, you don't think that's demeaning and threatening and scary in terms of the independence of our judiciary?
No,
when the president,
that's never happened before.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, gee, look at the fountain here. You want to point out all the splashes, but I'm telling you, where's the source?
One, they can't.
And it seems to me he goes after the judiciary. If that doesn't scare people, I mean, he goes after the acting attorney general. He goes after a judge in the Trump University case and suggests that he's incompetent because he has Mexican heritage. You think people don't get scared?
Okay, that's during the election. People are still mad about that. I get that. But he's now the president of the United States. These things will go through the legal channels, debate the substance of these issues. The substantive debate, I think, is lacking. We're talking about Ivanka's shoe line. Then we're talking about the solid core gym owner.
That's not the resistors. That was Kellyanne coming on Fox and saying, go buy Ivanka's. That's not right.
Yeah,
People have a reaction.
A real desire to debate the substance of the issues.
Really?
And I know I do. I really do.
They lose every time. They lose on immigration. They lose on trade. They lose on fighting all these wars in the Middle East. They've lost on the three big issues.
Part of the problem is that every time you try to get into the substance of the issues, I speak as someone who is covering the White House, you get pulled offside by a tweet from the president, which then gets reinforced in the briefing room. The White House, in some ways, has an interest in focusing on that.
We're being pulled aside by our clock, but this was a really interesting discussion, and the best part, I just got to listen to it. Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.